Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's children's book Spotlight series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 206. That is the 206th trolley stop here at the children's book Spotlight series here at PR from the Heart. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager of PR from the Heart and the co-host of the children's book Spotlight series. Joining me, as always, is my faithful furry friend and forever companion, little Forrest. He has enjoyed some time with his pet sitter over the course of these past several days as we have returned back to our beautiful city here of San Diego and the PR from the Heart offices after a wonderful trip to the East Coast, out to visit some of our favorite friends and neighbors in the Buffalo and Western New York area. And of course, if you're a fan of Mr. Rogers or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or both, yes, we had the opportunity to be able to spend some quality time in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, including some quality time specifically with that guy that's right behind us. Of course, you remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the popular long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We know him and we love him as David Newell, who joins me each and every month on PR from the Heart's Neighborly Reviews bookcast. But so much more about that to share. We're super excited to spend some quality time with you wherever you are, wherever you may be. If you are new to the program, thank you for spending some time with us here in our neighborhood. If you have been with us since day one or day two or day three or any point in time over the course of the near 6 years we've been doing this program, we're so privileged and blessed to be able to interview some of the top award-winning and best-selling children's authors and illustrators and middle grade authors in the world of children's literature, and of course featuring those authors who are on the rise in the kid lit community. And it's interesting when we use the term on the rise, right? And there's times when we can experience challenges and difficulties and obstacles and problems and stressors and troubles and worries. And it's so interesting because when we're moving forth in our mission and our purpose, whatever it is that we came here to do, we can feel fear, right? Raise your hand if you have felt fear at one point in time or another. We're all about the vulnerability here on the children's book Spotlight series, right? But fear is merely an illusion because it is not real. You know, if you really want to go down the science rabbit hole, you can say false evidence appearing real. Many people will actually break down fear as what that actually means. But today, this week here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, this wonderful trolley stop that we are now about to enjoy, when you take the time to realize and be with the fear and move through the fear, then you can spread your wings and you can take flight. And of course, leave it to a brand new children's book to help us remind us of all of that for the children in our lives. And of course, for us as big kids, because remember, we have the inner child that is within us in the process. And the more that we can do our part to be with our own fears and move through our own insecurities and get through to the other side of that, then we can hold more space for the children in our lives so that we can be better parents and caregivers and custodians of our little ones. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com and purchase your copy of Leo, James, and the Magical Phoenix Feather. It is now available. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for the newest member of the PR from the Heart family, Jordan Nightsage, you can head on over to Amazon.com. While there, that is your favorite online vehicle of your choosing, your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. Leave a 5-star review for Leo, James, and the Magical Phoenix Feather, as that is one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Jordan, letting him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. We've also included his official website below so that you can continue to be able to learn more about the awesome person who we are now connecting with. Is the trolley, of course. It's had some time to be able to travel back and forth across the country, you know, San Diego to Buffalo to Pittsburgh, back to San Diego. But it's super excited to head to, I believe it's called the Mitten State, if I'm not mistaken. the state of Michigan, and we go to the Motor City, which is, of course, Detroit, Michigan. Joining us is one of the newest members of the PR from the Heart family, the creator of Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather, children's author Jordan Nightsage, joining us as our featured guest here on episode number 206 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Jordan, pleasure to have you on board the program. Really excited to dive into the pages of your book momentarily, but most importantly, thanks for spending some time with us here in our neighborhood. It's great to finally have you on board.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here. So it's awesome.
Yes, and of course, we're going to finish up our housekeeping before we officially begin things here in the process. As I mentioned, many of you have been with us since day one, but many of you are just learning about the Children's Book Spotlight series coming off the heels of our recent exclusive interviews with, of course, if you're fans of the beloved children's television program that aired for many years on CBC, Sharon, Lois, and Bram, the Sharon, Lois, and Bram Elephant Show, our exclusive interview with Sharon Epson and her daughter, Randy, our exclusive interview with children's author Antoine Eady, our exclusive interview with ESPN SportsCenter anchor Elle Duncan, and the interview that you just actually, well, many of you may be just actually still enjoying right now, but our most recent trolley stop on the Children's Book Spotlight series, New York Times bestselling children's author and the co-creator of the Ordinary People Change the World series, Brad Meltzer. Those are just a mere fraction of the guests that have joined us over the course of these past several weeks alone. So one of the many ways you can pledge your support for us here at PR from the Heart, for the Children's Book Spotlight series, and for this particular trolley stop for Jordan Nightsage, is to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel, to share this very special trolley stop that you are now enjoying. And of course, if you feel that these messages that we are going to be sharing, that we've already shared thus far, need to be shared with someone in need, we encourage you to not only subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel, but to share this very special trolley stop on your favorite social media platforms of your choosing. By subscribing to the PR from the Heart YouTube channel, you can join the near 12,000 members of the PR from the Heart family that are proudly subscribing to our official YouTube channel. Jordan, I have to say, I'm really excited about this episode. And it's interesting. We've color coordinated. We've color coordinated, of course, the shining star here. We've color coordinated our wardrobes. So we're very much in sync. One of the many ways that we always do our part to kick off and begin a children's book spotlight series, for every human being, for every creative soul, there's always an origin story. It always begins at a specific moment in time. And for most children's authors, it's either a specific moment in time when they knew that their message was meant, when they were meant to do work for children, or it's kind of a combination of things that happen along the way. For those who are learning about your work for the first point in time, because you're extraordinarily creative in terms of the work that you're doing as an author beyond the scope of Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. And of course, we're going to be spending a good amount of time talking about this particular book as well today. But for those who are learning about your work for the first point in time today, could you share this a little bit more about your origin story and when you knew that your work was meant for the children, that a large part of your purpose was to be able to enrich and nurture the lives of children through writing, through storytelling, and through children's books?
Okay. All right. So I'm an attorney by profession. I've always kind of focused on, sort of the analytical, the concrete. I never considered being creative. I never considered writing a book, right? The last couple years have sort of changed things for me. I'm the father of a 4 and a 6-year-old, a daughter and a son. And they're reaching reading age. My son has reached reading age. And recently divorced the last couple years. And I found myself with, I have 50-50 custody with my ex-wife, and we get along very well. Good co-parenting, with the children. But I found myself with some extra time that I didn't have, when I was still married. And I'm thinking about my kids, right? And I'm thinking, maybe I could write something that my kids would like. And not only that they would like, but that I would want them to read. And that was kind of the idea for Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. I've always liked fantasy, really inspired by authors like Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, J.K. Rowling. And I know that when I was a kid, I loved fantasy. I loved make-believe, imagination, imaginary type worlds and that type of thing. So I wrote Leo James, the Magical Phoenix Feather, for my kids largely, and for any other children who will hopefully enjoy it. But I also put myself in the position of I guess I stepped back into my kid shoes and said, what would I have liked at that age? So Magical Phoenix Feather, it's fantasy, it's fairy tale, but it also teaches some practical and some real world lessons. Specifically, courage, bravery, facing your fears, friendship, helping others. In this case, helping animals, but I think it applies to helping others in general. So. We might get to this later in the interview, but I think fantasy and fairy tale can be unique, and I think work in unison with sort of more grounded, practical, sort of, I don't know, I guess I don't want to say nonfiction, but sort of more rooted in our world, type children's stories, right? So it's not that I think that only fantasy, the kids should only have fantasy books, but I think imagination is a great thing, especially for children. I think for adults too, personally. I don't think we should lose our imagination, but I really wanted to write something that again, my kids would like, hopefully more kids will like, that teaches something deep down, right? Like a timeless truth or timeless truths. So that's what I'm going for. Something that can take root in a child's heart, in a child's mind, and hopefully make them a better person as they grow older. So,
and I can clearly pick up on this, and we'll be diving into the pages. We'll be cracking the cover and diving into the pages of Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather in a couple of moments here. But touching upon the sci-fi fantasy genre, and it's interesting because there's so much depth to that, literally speaking, in terms of one's creativity, one's imagination. One of the elements about sci-fi and fantasy is that it can also provide a cathartic effect and escape from reality per se. But it's so interesting, and again, we'll kind of put a pin in this particular thread and then circle back on that momentarily. There's a lot of healing in this as well too, and one could easily just look at this and say, sci-fi fantasy, really healing? I'm not necessarily sure, but again, we'll put the pin into that momentarily and circle back. All children's books are needed in different ways, shapes, and forms. Obviously, there's a lot of books about kindness. There's a lot of books that have dogs as the main character. In terms of sci-fi fantasy, and you had alluded to this maybe a little bit, but maybe if you can kind of broaden the strokes a little bit, specifically speaking, what was it about the sci-fi fantasy genre and integrating that in the form of picture books? Why did that really strike your attention when you had the idea of Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather? It could have been the traditional children's picture book, right? Which, had, could have kind of gone down a little bit of a different route. But I feel in many ways that this really stands out, and then some even more based on the route that you went down. which is always a good feeling. So could you share this a little bit about why sci-fi, why fantasy, not even necessarily for yourself, but yes, for yourself, but also for kids? What do you think that really kids can connect with when they enjoy a good sci-fi fantasy book, especially when it's a sci-fi fantasy picture book for kids?
Definitely. I should say there's not a lot of sci-fi in the picture books. It's definitely more fantasy. Some of my older middle grade and young adult books have more sort of sci-fi elements, just to be clear for the viewers. As far as choosing fantasy, I mean, it comes down to the fact that I like fantasy, and again, I'm really inspired by authors like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Tolkien's world, Middle Earth, it's fictional, it's fantasy, but it's not escapism. I mean, you can learn a lot about life from reading Tolkien, and that's kind of what I was going for with my books. Kids love fantasy, and I don't mean just kids love escapism. I mean, kids like imaginary worlds, right? And adults do too. Let's face it. Fantasy books for adults are pretty big, right? So let me put it this way. I think that fantasy, especially for children, ages 4 to 9, which is kind of what my books are focused towards, as children ages 4 to 9, can touch kids in a way, touch their hearts, their minds, teach them about life in a way that maybe a more sort of practical-based book can't, I guess. Is it going to teach them how to tie their shoes? Yeah, probably not. But is it going to make an impact in the way that they show empathy towards somebody else at a time when that person needs some compassion? I hope so. That's kind of that is what I'm going for. So, do I think fantasy's better than just regular nonfiction? No, not at all. But I've had a great time writing it. Excuse me. I read it to my kids, and right at the excuse me, sorry. I would say right kind of at the sort of climax, the emotional moment where Leo and Valandar save Aurelia from a cliff where she's stuck on. My son reached over and gave me a big hug. Right at that moment, and I can't force that. I can't make that happen, that was just a natural reaction for him. So that's kind of what I'm going for, right? That touch kids and parents too, right? Kind of right here if I can.
And you're definitely doing that. And it's important that our listeners and our viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars are able to lean in even before reading your book. It's interesting because maybe I kind of had a little bit of a preconceived notion about like fantasy stories. Like if I could, if someone says, are fantasy books your number one, I can probably say not. But I always go into things with an open mind and with an open heart. And it's fascinating. And again, we're going to crack the cover and dive into the pages momentarily. One of the favorite parts of a children's book spotlight series episode. But we were joking around and laughing hysterically leading into the recording of our episode, knowing the fact that this to me had like some energies of Geppetto from Pinocchio, as well as The Never-Ending Story, which if you're a child of the 80s, you remember The Never-Ending Story, or you at least remember the theme song from the film, which was an amazing one-hit wonder from the 1980s. But to me, at least, my own interpretation of the story, this isn't the traditional fantasy kind of story because it has, you're really trying to integrate some key heartfelt themes and messages, and really, as you said, open minds, open hearts, bring parents and children together, bring grandparents and grandchildren together. And this is the perfect time to be able to do that, because it's interesting, in some of the research that I've been doing recently, what tends to happen is in the spring, kids can experience a little bit of a swoon. It's kind of like they got ants in their pants. You see the weather getting warmer, right? And it's a matter of you want to do everything other than schoolwork or reading or anything like that. So it's a matter of what can we do, again, as parents and parents, caregivers, custodians, and educators, to really connect our children with reading even more. And this is the perfect book to be able to do that as kids are going from spring into summer, leading into the forthcoming back to school season. We all have the human experience, but we all have the divine experience as well, too, Jordan. And it's interesting because, I kind of alluded to this earlier on when we kicked off our conversation. In life, we can experience challenges and difficulties and obstacles and problems and stressors and troubles and worries, but we're able to move through those in the process. You obviously mentioned that you had experienced a divorce on your end of things. Ultimately, that was probably not something that you envisioned was going to be happening. Like, things, relationships, they work. And then if, two people are meant to go their own separate ways, it's just a matter of, trying to have things be resolved as amicably as possible. And it sounds like that's the case for yourself, which is great. But I can only imagine as well, too, like when you're stepping into this world of children's literature, right? It's like anything that you do for the first time, you can experience those difficulties and those challenges and difficulties and fears and insecurities, right? We talk about fears and insecurities, right? In the course of your book itself, specifically speaking, what were some of the challenges and difficulties that you experienced, knowing the fact, okay, I'm going to write this book, and there's a likelihood that there's going to be several other books thereafter. What were some of the specific challenges and difficulties of note that you experienced when crafting, creating, writing, publishing Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather? And what were some of the things that you feel helped you to get through to the other side of those challenges and difficulties?
Okay. So, there's definitely always the days where I think, or maybe any author thinks, like, nobody's going to want to read this. This can't be any good, right? So that there's always those sort of doubts that are creeping in the back of your mind. But at least for me, I just keep moving forward, keep taking it one step at a time. There's also a lot of practical difficulties and challenges when it comes to writing and publishing. To give you an example, the first version, or I should say the first version of Leo James, the Magical Phoenix Feather, was an accident. It was a mistake. The first draft was loaded into the illustrated version, right? And I filed for copyright with it, and I should have caught it. It was a rookie mistake. I should have caught it. I didn't. And that caused me a lot of extra work to have to go and re-upload the book to various platforms and that type of thing. And right at that moment, when I realized that I had made this mistake, I was like almost ready to quit. It was like, how could I have to do all this over again? This is so much, Anyway, the point being is, don't quit, right? When we feel like we want to quit, we can't. We have to keep moving forward. We have to be, sort of fighters in our own life, right? We have to keep fighting the good fight, keep moving forward, working hard. And for me, it's thinking about my readers and the kids who are going to be reading the book, and thinking of it from that point of view, and that, okay, these difficulties are just temporary, and they will pass, and everything will be okay, So, with determination and continuing to work hard. So, I'm sure there's been a number of other difficulties I've had that aren't coming to mind right now. But overall, it's been really fun. I have a ton of fun writing and publishing and even promoting. my books. I have Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather is out right now. It came out in February. I also have a few other children's books coming out, all illustrated by Tamara Piper, who is an excellent illustrator and a great person and great to work with. The next book is called Leo James and the Magical Golden Antlers, which is sort of a continuation of Magical Phoenix Feather, right? So one of the characters in Magical Phoenix Feather is named Aurelia. She is what's known as an Aurelian deer, or the males are called Aurelian stags. And they are sort of a mythical deer species that I created for the sake of the books, for Alpha Dimension. And essentially their antlers glow in the forest or wherever they're at. Their antlers glow and they lead lost travelers back to safety, right? So that's the idea behind the Aurelian deer, right? That's not covered yet in Phoenix Feather. We get to that in Golden Antlers, but I like the idea. I like the idea of a mythical animal that leads lost travelers back to safety.
From even taking the time to enjoy Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather, there's something captivating about this. Now I'm not blessed to be a father yet on my end of things. At some point in time, I will be. But I do feel that we have the ability to parent our inner child as well, too. And of course, when I enjoy children's books with little Forrest, he lets me know the one that he enjoys as well, too. But again, there's something very magical about this story. And yes, now is the time where we will be backtrack. We will be cracking the cover and diving into the pages momentarily in mere moments of Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. We hope that you are currently enjoying episode number 206 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Joining us is children's author Jordan Nightsage. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Jordan's official website. We have included that in the description below. Also head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Jordan, to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books, is to leave a 5-star review for Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. If you are an educator and would like to be able to facilitate your own virtual or in-person author school visit with Jordan, of course, many authors were already starting to plan all the way for the back-to-school season, because it's going to be here sooner than you know it. So if you're doing your part to already craft and create the perfect author school visit for your students, be sure to be able to consider Jordan and his work, because I got to tell you, your students are going to love Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather, just as little Forrest and I have been over the course of these past couple of weeks here at PR from the Heart, preparing for this conversation. As I'd alluded to as well beforehand, once I had the chance to complete reading the book again, it brought back a lot of those childhood treasured memories for me. And it's interesting because it really created a new memory for me as well, too, because you know what? I can admit, growing up, just like many of us, I did have my own fears and insecurities and anxieties. And I'll kind of peel the curtain back a little bit. Guess what? Us as big kids, we still go through fears and anxieties and insecurities, right? We just sometimes have to put on the brave, big boy pants or the big girl face, so to speak, right? So, we've got it, right? But then in the meanwhile, we're kind of like, I'm not necessarily so sure. We never like to give away the whole kit and caboodle here on a Children's Book Spotlight series episode. We always encourage everyone to be able to fully immerse themselves in the book that we're choosing to share and to feature here on the program. I wanted to share some of the specific key things that really, again, grasped my attention. Purple being one of my favorite colors, literally one of the first illustration spreads, you see what Alpha Dimension looks like. You see this beautiful mythical creature literally right after Leo and Grandpa Victor are starting to connect with one another in the process. So again, if purple's a very soothing color, right? So again, I don't necessarily think that was, that was carefully curated between yourself and Tamara in the process, no doubt. And again, the fact that the story is not just fantasy, right? There are those heartfelt themes like, okay, moving through fear. It's something that we can all relate to. We want to be able to do that thing, whatever that is, be successful at our business, be a great mom, be a great dad, cook an awesome meal, right? But, again, sometimes life can get in the way, or we have to be able to experience the journey in order to have greater appreciation of things. And again, eventually you get to the point where you move through the fear and your heart can feel happy and full. And that really, if we may take a page out of the heart of and the mind of our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers, that really is such a good feeling as well, too. I know that we've kind of alluded to a few things that kids can be able to enjoy in the story, and some of the characters a little bit as well, too. But for those again who are learning about the story for the first time, could you give us a little bit of a description without giving away the whole, again, kit and caboodle? What will children, parents, families, those who love great children's books be able to learn about and enjoy when reading Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather?
Okay, so Leo James starts the story. He is being read or told a bedtime story by his grandfather, Victor. In the course of the bedtime story, he is sort of transported to Alpha Dimension, right? So it's a bedtime story. It's whether it's really happening or not, I guess is not necessarily relevant to the story. But Leo transports to Alpha Dimension. He meets a phoenix bird named Valandar. Right? It was a giant phoenix. I have spelled phoenix differently, and that is intentional because I wanted to create a new mythical beast, right? A new mythical animal for these stories. The way I've conceived it is that the phoenix, Phoenix, in Alpha Dimension is actually the inspiration for Earth's mythical phoenix bird, which in my stories is in Omega Dimension, right? And so that was intentional to create a new animal. So hope that doesn't bother anyone that Phoenix isn't spelled right or isn't spelled how it's traditionally spelled. But Leo makes friends with Valandar. Valandar gifts him one of his feathers, which in the story is essentially Valandar choosing Leo as his rider, as his companion, right? And they become friends, right? They become partners, really. So they fly through the air and check out Alpha Dimension, and they see a fawn that's stuck on a cliff that can't get down. And they both experience some fear as far as trying to help the fawn named Aurelia. And they have to get over that fear. They both encourage each other. They both help each other work through their fear. And they say, you know what? We're going to save Aurelia. We're going to get her down from that cliff. And then the story, continues from there. So I'm not sure, John, how much you want me to go through as far as the actual story. I can continue and say what happens, but just let me know.
I think that this is perfect because just being able to wet the whistle, so to speak, I can admit that one of the things that I experienced, like when I was first starting to read the book, I'm like, I want to know how this ends. Like literally when I was in like page 1, page 2, page 3, was so captivated by the story. I'm like, I want to know how it ends. But it's one of the things that this book also reminds us about the journey of life. It's a journey. It's something that, you have your ups and your downs, your lefts and your rights. You have some days where it's like you've got a lot of wins and a lot of victories to celebrate. And then there's some days where you kind of feel like a failure, right? And it's just a matter of knowing the fact that when you take the time to focus on yourself and also being of service to others as well, too. And that's one of the cool themes that I really like about the story as well, too, is the fact about when you see little Aurelia and she needs to be rescued and brought back to her family. That's a matter of taking the time to help someone in need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's this blend about, moving through your own fears, getting stronger in the process, but knowing the fact that when you take the time to help other people, it's interesting how that strength increases. And that's something that I wanted to touch upon. If you could elaborate on that further. When it comes to, sometimes people think that getting stronger is about pumping iron and lifting weights. And there's truth to that. But what is it about serving others and helping people that helps us to be able to connect with more of our own confidence and more of our own strength? What do you think is the correlation between the two?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, one way to become strong is to sort of build yourself up, right? But I think on sort of another level, sort of a higher level, one way to be strong is to be willing to sacrifice for somebody else, right? To even if it's just your time, right? A lot of times when we have the opportunity to help somebody else, it doesn't take that much from us.
Nope.
It might be 20 minutes, 15 minutes, a kind word, something like that. Just some encouragement. I think helping others is a higher calling than helping ourselves, right? I know we're all tempted to just, especially in today's day and age, to just be out for ourselves, right? Especially, as an attorney, I have to be out for myself and my client no matter what, mostly my client first, but but I think in life in general, I mean, that's how the world is supposed to work. We're supposed to pour ourselves out for other people, right? And then somebody pours themselves out for us when we need it, So I mean, I think it's a lesson that kids need to learn, and if we want our children to be compassionate, and I guess maybe some people don't. I want my kids to be compassionate. I want my kids to feel love and compassion for other people, and especially feel love and compassion for people who are helpless, who don't have someone to help them, who are lonely, who are kind of lost or who are kind of desperate or in despair, right? I think that's what life's about. That's like that's the most valuable thing often that we can do for somebody. It's just to be there for them, And I mean, I don't, it shouldn't necessarily be, oh, well, I want to feel good about myself, so I'm going to help this other person, A lot of times helping other people and getting into somebody's pain and somebody's frustration, a lot of times that's not, in my experience, that doesn't always make you feel good, right? It does ultimately, right? But you don't have to feel good to help somebody, right? What I mean is sometimes empathy requires getting down to that level that somebody's at, right? If you help somebody who's sad, you might experience some sadness. It's going to happen, right? If you help somebody who's in despair, you might feel some of that despair, right? But you're sort of, again, I say fighting the good fight. We're lifting each other up, right? We want to lift each other up. And that's what I want to do with the book and with my writing, and especially with the children's books, the illustrated children's books to show.
And I'm really glad that you're sharing what you're sharing in the way in which you're sharing it, because, let's be honest, in the world that we live in, there's enough heaviness. Kids pre-pandemic had a lot of stuff on their plate. You factor in the pandemic, and then there's different other things that are happening between, anything social media related that can impact children's mental health, opioid crisis. I mean, kids are going through so much now in comparison to when we were growing up as kids, right? So it's a matter of taking the time. You never know what someone's going through, right? And this is one of the things that I really feel that children's books provide healing. And we've talked about this almost since day one on the Children's Book Spotlight series. I can only imagine there's children out there who feel that their parents don't even love them or care about them. But when they open up the pages, when they crack the cover and they dive into the pages of their newest children's book, it's like, wow, I've got friends and life can get better and things can turn around. So children's books really help kids to hold on to hope. And again, I really love how towards the end of the story, again, you specifically use the phrase about taking flight, right? And it's interesting, I just came back from an excursion out to the East Coast, to Buffalo and to Pittsburgh, and I hopped onto several airplanes, and it's like taking flight. And I really feel that this leads into something that I want to cover here as we're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, Jordan Nightsage. We hope that you are fully enjoying episode number 206 of the program. In addition to Jordan's brand new children's book, Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. It is now available. We encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Jordan's official website. We've included that in the description below. If Amazon.com is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can, of course, head on over there and leave a 5-star review. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for Jordan is by leaving a 5-star review, letting him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and for those who love great children's books. Again, for all educators across the country who are now facilitating in-person and virtual author school visits for the back-to-school season and the 2024-2025 school year, be sure to check out Jordan's work. You will not be disappointed in the least, especially with Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. We always like to be able to provide some useful tips, tools, strategies for parents, caregivers, grandparents, educators, those who want to make a better difference in the lives of their children, to immediately extract what they learn and take away from a Children's Book Spotlight series episode and implement it into the lives of their little ones so that the little ones can take flight. So obviously, again, one of the things that can prevent children or adults from taking flight is when you have the heaviness, right? When you have the fears and the insecurities, right? But as you move through those, as you clear those, as you heal those, then you feel lighter and then you can take flight. What are some of the things that you feel that we can do as parents, as caregivers, and custodians of our little ones to help and support our children in moving through their fears so that they have a greater chance, a greater likelihood of their dreams coming true, their dreams taking flight? What comes to mind when I share that, when I ask that, Jordan?
I think being there in the moment with your kids, with our kids, not being distracted by other things. I mean, I know we have work, we have social engagements, we have this and that. They know when we're there with them. They know when we're there with them, heart to heart, mind to mind. But making sure that your kids know they're loved no matter what. Unconditional love goes a long way with kids. That's how my parents were with me, and I was not easy to parent. They were so patient with me, and I feel that duty to be as patient with my kids as my parents have been with me. And just not being afraid to talk to them about things, about more than just, okay, you have homework tonight, you have to learn how to tie your shoes, you have to get better at basketball or soccer. But okay, if there's a kid at school who doesn't have anyone hanging out with him or her, it's okay to hang out with them. It's okay to be that person, that kid who hangs out with the kid who might not have other people to hang out with, right? Compassion and empathy, I think, are two of the most important things we can teach our kids. And then always remembering, and this is really tough, this is so much easier said than done, but remembering that our kids learn from what we do more than what we tell them is a huge challenge for parents, but I think it's important to remember, right? They imitate us more than they listen to our lectures. So, I guess for me as a parent, that's what I try to do, is to be someone my kids can imitate at the same time as listen to. So.
I'm really glad that you touched upon that thread too, because kids' minds and hearts are like sponges. You could say
Mhm.
monkey see, monkey do, right? So when children who are in our lives, if we're moms and dads or grandmas or grandpas or teachers, and if a child sees us do this, they're going to emulate it, or whether it be now or down the line. So it's important that we do our job to be the highest and best versions of ourselves, in terms of especially sharing compassion and empathy and understanding, being appreciative, helping others, when someone needs, when you necessarily, when you maybe even have nothing to gain, because, the society in which we're starting to come out from, but many people are still immersed in, is the what's in it for me before how may I be of service, right?
Mhm.
But it's interesting to note what happens when the focusing on the service of others, how your needs are always taken care of. It still involves, healthy containers and healthy boundaries. Don't get me wrong, but again, this is so fascinating, and I'm really loving this conversation because, again, when I first looked at the book, I'm like, there's something about this. This isn't just a fantasy book. And then it's like, oh yes, this has some of the key heartfelt themes and messages that I really love, right? Especially the kids can be able to enjoy as well too. Obviously, you are not done by a long shot, as you had already briefly alluded to, and we'll kind of circle back to that pin that we had about your second book. So we're going to be seeing Leo James in another amazing adventure. Could we always, like, when you watch movies and you enjoy the golden buttered popcorn, or the soft hot pretzel bites, or the crispy nachos, right? You always see coming attractions, right? So every once in a while, if authors are in the pipeline and their book is waiting in the wings, get it, full pun intended, waiting in the wings, your next installment of Leo James, it's in the wings. Could you give us a little bit of a sneak preview of what kids can expect to enjoy when they find themselves fully immersed in your next story?
Yes, the next book is, as I mentioned, Leo James and the Magical Golden Antlers. Um, that features Leo James, Mila Quinn, and Aragos, who is Aurelia from Phoenix Feather's older brother, right? Um, Mila Quinn and Leo meet each other in the forest. They start to play, and the time gets away from them, and it becomes nighttime. And they get lost, and they have to get back. And the story is about them getting back and how they do. And it specifically deals with um, listening to your parents, but also knowing that your parents still love you even when they tell you not to do something that you want to really do as a kid. That's sort of the main theme of that book. The next one after that, it's Tamara Piper is still illustrating it. It's Leo James in the Lion's Magical Quest. And that specifically gets at, it's going to be Leo and Milo again. And they meet Caligar, the Caligo lion, who has a disability from birth regarding his paw, one of his paws. And so them showing empathy towards him, realizing that, that the intention of that book is to sort of teach the idea to kids to understand and have empathy for other people and their life's challenges, right? Also, I'm working on a Mila Quinn series that will also have Leo in it. And those are going to be a bit more adventure based. So I think the first one I have planned is Mila Quinn and the Pirate's Treasure, or the Quest for the Pirate's Treasure, I should say. So I got a number of books coming out. Again, the next one is Leo James and the Magical Golden Antlers. And I think that I feel comfortable having my kids read them. And I think they're good for kids. Even though they're fantasy, I think they teach some practical, real life lessons, especially about, again, compassion and empathy is what I'm going for.
When you when you're talking about compassion and empathy, the living embodiment of that is our favorite neighbor here at PR from the Heart. And that's, of course, we feel his presence and we feel his spirit. And we just had the opportunity to spend some quality time actually at his institute, the Fred Rogers Institute in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, during our travels to Pittsburgh. And of course, as a little tip of the cap to our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers, we connect with him when we close out a children's book spotlight series. He did this in many ways, shapes, and forms, whether it be through college commencement speeches, talks, visits to kids in hospitals across the country. Of course, he did it through Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but most notably when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmy shortly before he passed from stomach cancer. And he always kept the time, Jordan, whether it be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or a full minute. He encouraged us to remember those who helped love us into being. Mm-hmm. That was his way of saying, remember those amazing people who came across our path when we were feeling low, when we had our own fears, who helped us to realize that those fears were not true. They were unfounded, right? They were just an illusion of sorts, that were stronger than that, but who helped us to raise us up. And the process helped us take flight. Who are some of the people that you would like to publicly recognize here on episode number 206 of the Children's Book Spotlight series that helped love you, Jordan Nightsage, into being?
Definitely my parents. They're first and foremost. I am so thankful to them. Like I said before, for just being patient with me growing up. I wasn't the best kid. I think they'll say, "Oh, you were a fine kid. You're a good kid." And the truth is, no, I was really difficult to raise. So my parents, a lot of my family members, my grandparents, I've had the benefit of knowing, I think 3 of my grandparents and several step-grandparents. And that's pretty huge, to know that many close family members from that generation. That's been awesome. There's been so many people, friends, family members, who've just at difficult times have been there to sort of offer exactly what needed to be offered, whether it be just, again, an encouraging word, support, say, look, we're with you no matter what happens, we're going to be here. So, and that, especially with kids, communicating that to kids is huge. Kids can't feel like kids can't feel like their parents are going to pull the rug out from them at any moment and leave them behind, No,
they're very much looking for not even just compassion, empathy, understanding, but also a sense of security, a sense of safety, knowing the fact that we can be pillars of support for them in the process. And I really appreciate you remembering those special people who helped love you into being, because, Fred, and I'll paraphrase it, but he said that whether those people are near or far, whether they're still walking the earthly plane with us or watching down from heaven, that they're smiling, knowing the positive, indelible impact that they made on your life as well, too. And we are also huge Disney buffs here at the Children's Book Spotlight series at PR from the Heart. And of course, that Disney magic, that Disney energy always reminds us that we have the ability to bring to form and to shape our dreams or desires, our goals or ambitions. We have the ability to have our dreams take flight, just as we've been talking about. One of the messages within the message, so to speak, of Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. And of course, one of the best ways that we encapsulate this, and we had the chance to actually take in the opening night performance of Disney's Aladdin here in San Diego at the Civic Theater at the beginning of this month. Such a magical performance. But of course, we go back to the year 1992. We remember the late Robin Williams. Of course, he voiced the Genie of the Lamp. We always close out every children's book spotlight series with a little segment that we like to call 3 Wishes. So Jordan, again, you have been giving freely to children, to parents, to families, to educators. all across the country and all around the world, in addition to your own kids, your own family as well, too. So this is your time to receive. So you are being given 3 wishes here on episode number 206 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. It's interesting because when we get to this part of the program, authors are like, wait a minute, I thought this was an interview and now I'm starting to get wishes. Like, what's happening? Well, this is literally turning into a real life fantasy here at the Children's Book Spotlight series for you, Jordan Nightsage. So I think, as the genie says, the only automatic disqualifiers are you can't make someone fall in love with you and you can't ask for more wishes, but anything else is fair game. So these wishes, they can be for yourself, they can be for your children, they can be for the children of the world. What would your 3 wishes be?
Okay. Let's see. This is tough. This is the toughest question you've asked me so far. Because I gotta think about, okay,
Yep.
Especially as a lawyer too, I got to make sure my wishes are, in line with exactly what, I'm just
Totally.
kidding. I would wish for my kids and all kids, for everyone's children, that they grow up like we've been talking about, in a loving and secure environment, that they be given the environment and the tools needed to become the best person they can be. I understand that might sound a bit cliche, but I think it actually matters. I think it's for real, right? We want to be the best person we can be. And honestly, I want my kids to be better than me. That would be a wish right there, right? I want my kids to do better than me, not just financially or, materially, but to be better people than I am, to be a better person than I am, right? To keep moving forward generation by generation and, sort of some moral progress, you might say, right? That would be great. As far as a general wish, I would wish that all of us throughout the whole world could be more compassionate and more empathetic towards others, right? I think a lot of the world's problems would be solved if we just started treating people better, treating each other better in our own circles. If each of us treated our neighbor, the person next to us better, our family members, right? The world would get better. That would spread. That can spread. And there'd be a lot less sort of evil in the world, right? On, I guess, a more practical level, I would wish that everyone be able to have a job and a passion and a purpose in life that provides them with that fulfills them and also provides for them materially and financially. And that stems from, I meet so many people who, it seems, especially younger people than me, who it seems like their job isn't paying them enough, right? Mm. They can't eat, they can't make ends meet, right? They're working hard, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but it's not working out. I'd love for those situations. I think there's millions of people in that situation. And I would love to see that improve too. So to kind of take it from my kids personally to, and all kids, to just a general world wish, to sort of a more material, practical wish. Those are my 3 wishes. So I hope those are beautiful wishes, Jordan. And it's long since been said that when your wishes come from your heart, they have a greater chance of coming true as well. Raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 206 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We see hands from Jordan, hands from myself. We see hands from the little ones on screen, most importantly, as we like to see. That means mission accomplished, job well done. And also on the thread of, who here has had fun today. I know that little Forrest has had fun here today. He's very quiet. He's just enjoying a nice little slumber, but he did want me to pass along an all-important note, of course. If you were a movie buff in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, you remember the beloved movie critic duo Siskel and Ebert. And when they loved a movie, they gave it 2 thumbs up. Well, one of the fastest growing recommendations in the world of children's literature since Little Forrest came into my life in the fall of 2022 is what we like to call 2 Paws Up. And since Little Forrest loved Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather,
And now you hear him. He did a little shaking right there. That is his reminder that he is giving 2 paws up for Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. Again, it is now available. You can head on over to Jordan's official website, which we have included in the description below. You can head on over to Amazon.com. Be sure, of course, if you love Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather, then you will definitely love Leo James and the Magical Golden Antlers. Feel free to leave 5-star reviews for Jordan as well. Again, that's just one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Jordan to let him know that he's doing wonderful and magical world, wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. And Jordan's work is magical in his own right and in the ultimate right as well, too. And of course, one of the things we forgot to mention, if you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's and or independent bookstore, and you do not see them stocking Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about Jordan's work here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, and let them know that it would be a perfect addition to your favorite local library, your favorite children's, or your favorite independent bookstore in the process. And again, to all teachers, all educators all across the country, first of all, big shout out to everyone who is leading the charge leading into the final stretch run of the year. As you are doing your part to create opportunities for your kids in the forms of author school visits for the 2024-2025 school year, be sure to connect with Jordan via his official website, again, which we have included in the description below. We've also included Jordan's official social media platforms in the description below. We'll keep the conversation going post-Children's Book Spotlight series as well. But as we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go, but fear not, there are many more magical trolley stops to come. If you have enjoyed this episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series, and we sure hope that you have, because we sure saw a lot of hands on screen between myself and Jordan, the little ones, and then the 2 paws up from little Forrest. If the messages that we have talked about, the messages that are contained within the pages of Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather, if they have helped you, if they've inspired you, if you say, if anything, you know what, now I'm ready to put my fears to rest. I'm going to move through them, whatever that fear is, small, medium, or super size, and move through to the other side so that whatever it is that you want to see happen can take flight for your highest and greatest good. If you feel that this message needs to be shared with someone in need, we encourage you, if you haven't had the chance to do so, to subscribe to our official YouTube channel. And of course, share this very special trolley stop that you have been enjoying. That is episode number 206 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Some housekeeping notes before we officially close out episode number 206 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. If you are a children's author, or if you are a middle grade author and would love to share your inspiring story and the release of your brand new children's book, just like Jordan did here this week on this awesome trolley stop that is the Children's Book Spotlight series, episode number 206. Head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or you can connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter/X, all at PR from the Heart. Of course, you can find out exclusively before anyone else future guests on the Children's Book Spotlight series and future installments of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, which we're going to be talking about momentarily, by subscribing to PR from the Heart's all-new official online newsletter. And in the process, by subscribing to our official newsletter, you will actually score, especially, this is awesome for children's authors, but you get free 3 spring PR publicity tips. As we like to say, 3 simple yet powerful spring PR publicity tips for children's authors. You get that in your inbox as a free gift just by signing up for our official newsletter. Of course, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation as well, we are hot off the heels of our return trip back to Pittsburgh and spending some quality time with our friends and neighbors at the Center for Media Innovation in downtown Pittsburgh. We look forward to sharing and premiering our forthcoming editions of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast. If you are a children's author and would love for David Newell, who again played the beloved Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, if you would love for David and I to review your brand new children's book, to deliver a neighborly review of your new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, you can head on over to our official website, PR from the Heart, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms. Again, all at PR from the Heart, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter/X. And of course, interestingly enough, we're talking about dreams taking flight, right? There are many children's authors whose dreams are taking flight. We are truly grateful to support many of the top names in the world of children's literature, such as John Parrott and Catherine Roy. We had the chance to create some amazing book tours for them, and we're doing some wonderful work for some of the rising stars, who we really classify as the shining stars in the kid lit community. If you are a children's author and are looking for dedicated PR publicity support so that you can share your story, the release of your brand new children's book, and connect with more parents, grandparents, educators through the media, contact us via our official website, PR from the Heart. Schedule your own courtesy connection call. Let us see how we can be of service to you to create a book media tour in your city or a national book media tour in the process. Again, one final time, head on over to Jordan Nightsage's official website, which we have included in the description below. Head on over to Amazon.com. Be sure to leave the 5-star review for Leo James and the Magical Phoenix Feather. Again, that's just one of several ways that you can pledge your support for Jordan to let him know that he's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. But again, as we mentioned, when we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. But again, there are many more magical trolley stops to come here on the Children's Book Spotlight series, and in life for that matter, right? The best is truly yet to come. We want to thank you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series, for your continued support of children's authors and middle grade authors and illustrators, such as Jordan, who again are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books, for your continued support of local libraries, children's and independent bookstores, truly the pillars of our community. Above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. Again, we felt his presence, his spirit, for quite some time right now, but especially here today in this trolley stop, episode number 206 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. In many ways, shapes, and forms, Mr. Rogers, through his own private numerology, he reminded us of our inherent worth, our inherent value. He helped us to remember that we can move through anything and that we can literally do whatever it is that we want. Our dreams can take flight. It's not just, gobbledygook and nonsense, right? That kind of sounds like a term that you would find in a fantasy book, gobbledygook and nonsense, right? Those are some future characters in a fantasy book, I'm sure. But did you know that Mr. Rogers weighed 143 pounds for his entire natural adult life? 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. So again, in his own private numerology, he let us remember how special that we are by his weight that he weighed while walking this earthly plane. As a little tip of the cap to Mr. Rogers, as little Forrest and Jordan were kind enough to spend some quality time with us here in our neighborhood, we like to conclude our program by sharing our favorite 3 numbers, 243. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. That is our reminder that we see you. We see your inherent worth, your inherent value, that we like you, that we love you just the way that you are whole, healthy, complete, and special, just the way that you are. And that again, we like you and that we love you just the way that you are. So for little Forrest, for Jordan Nightsage, for myself, John Masiulionis, thank you for spending some quality time with us here in our neighborhood for another all-new edition of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.